The Man Who Lived Twice. The story of the man who lived twice is one of the most baffling mysteries of modern times. A man living an ordinary life in one town suddenly vanished without a trace. Years later, he reappeared in another town, with the same face, the same voice, and the same memories, claiming a completely different identity. Authorities, family members, and those who knew him were left questioning reality. How could one man live two lives? Was this a case of mental illness, extreme deception, or something far more inexplicable? In this documentary, we examine the life, disappearance, and reappearance of this man, a life that should not exist. We explore the investigations, the contradictions, and the unresolved questions that continue to haunt those involved. This is the story of the man who lived twice. The first life, expanded version. The man's first life began quietly in a small, unassuming town. To those around him, he was ordinary, the kind of person who did not draw attention, who followed a predictable routine, and who appeared dependable in all his daily interactions. He had a modest home, a steady job, and a family that knew him as a loving partner and attentive parent. Neighbors described him as polite, helpful, and well-liked in the community. Despite the apparent normalcy of his life, subtle oddities began to emerge over time. Friends and acquaintances noticed moments when his stories did not align with known facts. A photograph from a school event might show someone he did not remember, or a coworker would recall an interaction he had no memory of. On official documents such as birth certificates or school records, minor inconsistencies appeared, small errors that could easily be dismissed, yet collectively hinted at a deeper mystery. He lived this life for many years, seemingly blending into society without raising suspicion. Each day followed a familiar pattern. Work in the morning, small errands, interactions with neighbors, evenings spent with family. To the casual observer, he was entirely ordinary. Yet beneath this veneer of normality, there was a growing tension, a quiet unease that those closest to him could not identify. Friends who spent extended time with him began noticing peculiar behavior. Sometimes he would appear lost in thought for long periods, as if recalling events that had never occurred. At other times, he would confuse details about his own past, mixing names, dates, and locations in ways that seemed impossible for someone of his age and education. Some family members dismissed these lapses as stress or fatigue, while others could not shake the sense that something more unusual was unfolding. Even his professional life carried small, unexplained irregularities. He would recall projects that never existed or claim responsibilities he had not undertaken. Colleagues occasionally reported that he remembered meetings or conversations that others had no record of. To outsiders, these moments were minor and easily overlooked, yet they formed a pattern that would later become critical in understanding the enigma of his life. Despite the strange inconsistencies, he was socially active, participating in local events, helping neighbors, and maintaining the appearance of a normal life. Community members often commented on his reliability, unaware that beneath the surface, the man who appeared ordinary was living with anomalies that defied simple explanation. His first life, though outwardly stable, was fragile in ways no one could anticipate. The inconsistencies, the small gaps in memory, and the subtle differences in how he recalled events created a foundation for the larger mystery that would later emerge. It was a life that seemed normal, but one that would vanish entirely, leaving friends, family, and authorities puzzled. In this first life, the man existed as a figure of familiarity and routine, yet the cracks in his reality were already forming. And when this life ended abruptly, it would give rise to something far stranger, a second existence, a life that should not have been possible, a man appearing again, with the same face, the same voice, and memories that mirrored the first. This was the life before the disappearance, the life that was believed to be complete, until it ended without warning, leaving unanswered questions and laying the groundwork for the impossible story to follow. The disappearance. The first life of the man who would later be known as the one who lived twice came to a sudden and inexplicable end. One day, he was present, working, socializing, and interacting with friends and family. The next, he had vanished. There were no warning signs, no farewell, and no explanation. The disappearance left his family and community in shock. Relatives reported that he had not spoken of plans to travel or leave town. Personal belongings, including wallets, identification documents, and even his favorite items, remained in his home. No evidence suggested that he had prepared for a planned absence. Local authorities were called in to investigate. Neighbors were interviewed. Family members recounted his last known movements, noting that everything appeared normal. He had eaten dinner with his family the night before, conversed with co-workers the morning of his disappearance, and made casual plans for the following days. Nothing indicated that he would disappear entirely. Despite extensive searches, no trace of the man could be found. Law enforcement examined his bank accounts and credit card activity, only to discover no transactions had occurred. Surveillance footage from local businesses and traffic cameras provided no clear evidence of him leaving town. Phones were silent. Social media accounts showed no activity. It was as if he had simply ceased to exist. The disappearance raised multiple theories. Some suggested that he had chosen to leave voluntarily, to start a new life elsewhere, but experts quickly dismissed this idea. The man had strong ties to his community, a family that relied on him, and no apparent reason to vanish. Others speculated about foul play, kidnapping, or an accident, yet investigators found no evidence supporting any of these scenarios. Friends and neighbors remembered strange signs leading up to his disappearance. Some recalled that he had become increasingly introspective, often lost in thought or distracted. Others noted unusual conversations where he spoke of not feeling present or living someone else's life. At the time, these comments were dismissed as stress or eccentricity. But in hindsight, they seemed to hint at something far more profound, a prelude to an event that would defy explanation. The disappearance was thorough and total. Even authorities from nearby towns were involved, yet no trace of him emerged. Law enforcement expanded the search region, contacting hospitals, shelters, and even neighboring states. Still, there was no record of travel, no sightings, and no clues. Weeks turned into months. Family members experienced deep frustration and growing fear. The inability to find him created a sense of unease, not just about his fate, but about the nature of reality itself. How could a man who had been visible, known, and documented simply vanish? How could every trace of his life disappear without explanation? The case drew attention from private investigators and amateur researchers alike. Yet, despite their best efforts, the mystery deepened. Every attempt to trace his movements ended in a dead end. Documents, records, and eyewitness accounts all confirmed that the man had existed, but in the days following his disappearance, it was as if that existence had been erased. For those who knew him, the disappearance left lasting psychological scars. Family members reported nightmares, anxiety, and an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. Neighbors described a lingering unease in the town, as though the very fabric of normal life had been disrupted by the impossibility of what had occurred. By the end of the first year, the case was officially considered a missing person investigation, but even law enforcement admitted the circumstances were unusual. There are no signs of foul play, no financial or personal motives for leaving, and no leads indicating where he could have gone. The disappearance of the man who would later be known for living twice was complete. His first life had ended abruptly, leaving only questions, memories, and an empty space in the lives of those who knew him. And then, years later, something even stranger would happen, something that would shatter the understanding of life, identity, and reality itself. The reappearance. Years after his disappearance, the impossible occurred. The man returned. Reports began to emerge from a city hundreds of miles away. People noticed a man who looked strikingly familiar, identical even to the man who had vanished. His facial features, voice, and mannerisms were unmistakable. Those who had known him in his first life were shocked to see him again, alive, yet claiming a completely different identity. The reappearance was sudden and inexplicable, He arrived in this new town with no apparent connection to anyone or anything from his previous life. He introduced himself under a new name, spoke of a new family, and shared details of a life that seemed wholly unrelated to the one he had left behind. Friends and family from his first life were confronted with a terrifying question. How could this be the same person? Eyewitnesses and acquaintances confirmed the resemblance down to the smallest details. The way he spoke, walked, and gestured. It was impossible to deny. Yet, the stories he told did not match the memories of those who had known him before. Authorities became involved once again. Local police and federal investigators tried to verify his identity through fingerprints, dental records, and official documents. Every test confirmed one thing. This man was biologically identical to the one who had disappeared. Yet his life narrative, his connections, and his personal history were entirely different. Attempts to reconcile these two lives only deepened the mystery. People tried to ask questions about his disappearance, but his answers were vague, inconsistent, or deflected entirely. He claimed no knowledge of the events that had taken place during the missing years. For investigators, this raised even more questions. Was he lying, confused, or truly unaware of his first life? Neighbors and co-workers in the new city reported odd behavior. He seemed fully integrated into his second life, but subtle inconsistencies appeared. He occasionally hesitated when speaking about dates, events, or people. Sometimes he would recall phrases or experiences that seemed out of place. Yet to those around him, he was a convincing, normal individual, living his second life as if it had always been real. Psychologists and experts were brought in to assess him. Some proposed dissociative identity disorder or extreme amnesia as explanations. Others suggested a rare neurological condition or even a psychological coping mechanism for trauma. Yet nothing fully accounted for the totality of the evidence. He physically existed in both lives. Memories aligned inconsistently with each, and documentation from his first life proved he had lived in a completely separate reality. The implications were chilling. How could one person exist in two places at once, or live two sequential lives that seemed mutually exclusive? The reappearance challenged every assumption about identity, memory, and the continuity of human life. Meanwhile, family members of his first life struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Some approached him, desperate for answers. Others avoided him, fearful of the inexplicable truth confronting them. For many, the reappearance was terrifying, a direct confrontation with something that seemed to defy the natural laws of existence. The man who had vanished years before now walked the earth again. But he was not the same person that people remembered. He was a new life, a second existence that should have been impossible. And yet, evidence confirmed he was one and the same as the man who had disappeared. Same face, same body, same unmistakable features. Only the life he claimed and the memories he shared were different. This reappearance marked the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter that would lead investigators, scientists, and family members into questions that may never be fully answered. The investigations. The reappearance of the man who had vanished years earlier immediately drew the attention of authorities, private investigators, and experts in psychology and forensics. What began as a local curiosity quickly became a case that baffled professionals at every level. Federal investigators were brought in to examine the facts. They began with a simple question. Was this man really the same individual who had disappeared? Using fingerprints, dental records, and photographs, they verified his identity. Every test confirmed the unthinkable. This was the same person who had vanished, yet his current life was completely different. Authorities next attempted to reconstruct the timeline of the missing years. Travel records, phone logs, financial activity, and employment history were examined. Despite exhaustive efforts, there was no trace of him during the intervening years. It was as if he had existed in a parallel reality, unseen and undocumented by the systems that track human activity. Psychologists and psychiatrists became involved to assess his mental state. Could this be a case of severe dissociative identity disorder? Was he experiencing extreme amnesia, or memory manipulation. Some suggested that trauma could cause someone to forget an entire life, effectively creating a second identity. Others proposed rare neurological conditions, yet none could explain the complete physical and documented continuity between the two lives. Private investigators interviewed witnesses from both lives. Neighbors, co-workers, friends, and family members were asked to recall details, interactions, and personal experiences. In nearly every case, those who had known him in his first life confirmed his presence, while those who knew him in the second life described a man entirely consistent with their experiences. Yet the two timelines could not be reconciled. Even the man himself provided limited answers. He claimed no knowledge of his first life, insisting that his memories, experiences, and relationships in the second life were authentic and complete. He could recall events from the second life in vivid detail. Yet when asked about the first life, he either denied knowledge or became visibly confused. This only deepened the mystery, creating a puzzle with pieces that seemed impossible to fit together. Some theories began to circulate outside official channels. Amateur researchers and conspiracy theorists proposed extreme explanations: government experimentation, cloning, or even manipulation of reality itself. While such theories were speculative, they reflected the profound discomfort people felt in confronting a case that appeared to defy every known principle of biology and psychology. Legal authorities faced unique challenges as well. Questions arose about identity verification, inheritance, marriage, and other civil matters. If the man truly existed in two separate lives, which identity held legal weight? Which family had legitimate claims to him? These questions highlighted not only the mysterious nature of his case, but also its real-world implications. Throughout the investigations, the most striking fact remained: there was no evidence that he had faked either life. All documentation, records, and witness accounts were verified independently. There was no apparent motive for deception, no financial or criminal gain to be made, and no indication of collusion. The investigations, while extensive, ultimately raised more questions than answers. How could one man live two separate, documented lives? Was it a psychological phenomenon, a supernatural event, or something entirely beyond human understanding? As the case continued, investigators, experts, and family members alike were left grappling with the unsettling possibility that the man who lived twice was, in some inexplicable way, real, and that reality itself might be stranger than anyone could comprehend. The theories. The case of the man who lived twice defied explanation, and as a result, numerous theories emerged, each attempting to make sense of a life that appeared impossible. Investigators, experts, and observers debated the possibilities, but no single explanation satisfied all the evidence. 1. Psychological phenomena. Some experts proposed that the man might be suffering from a rare psychological condition. Dissociative identity disorder was suggested, a condition where multiple identities inhabit a single body, often with differing memories. Another theory proposed extreme amnesia or fugue states, where an individual forgets their identity and assumes a new one. While these explanations accounted for memory inconsistencies and identity confusion, they failed to explain the physical continuity. Fingerprints, dental records, and DNA all confirmed that the man in the second life was biologically identical to the first. Psychology alone could not explain how one body could live two complete lives with verified documentation. 2. Criminal deception. Another theory suggested intentional deception. Could the man have orchestrated an elaborate hoax, assuming a second identity to escape responsibilities or pursue new opportunities? While this idea was plausible on a superficial level, it quickly unraveled under scrutiny. Investigators found no evidence of financial gain, criminal activity, or motive for assuming a second life. Friends and family in both lives reported interactions that seemed spontaneous and genuine. The consistency of his appearance and mannerisms across years made it highly unlikely that he could have faked both lives without detection. 3. Government or scientific experimentation. A darker, More speculative theory suggested that he might have been part of a secret experiment. Could memory manipulation, cloning, or some form of advanced psychological conditioning explain the case? Supporters of this theory pointed to unexplained gaps in his history and the total absence of records during the missing years. However, there was no direct evidence to support such claims. Even so, the theory persisted in discussions online and in fringe research circles because the man's existence seemed to defy conventional understanding. 4. Supernatural explanations. Some theorists looked beyond science and psychology. Was this a case of reincarnation? A shift between parallel realities? An anomaly in the fabric of time or identity itself? While unprovable and highly speculative, these explanations reflected the profound discomfort people felt when confronted with a scenario that broke the rules of reality. The supernatural theories captured the imagination of those seeking an explanation for something that seemed truly impossible. 5. Combination theories. A final perspective suggested that the truth might involve elements from multiple explanations, perhaps psychological anomalies, combined with unknown environmental or experimental factors, contributed to his condition. Or maybe something occurred that humans are not yet capable of fully understanding. What all experts agreed upon was this: the man who lived twice challenged the very definitions of identity, memory, and human experience. His existence, verified across two separate documented lives, could not be neatly explained by any single theory. The diversity of theories highlighted the complexity of the case. Each explanation offered partial answers, but none addressed the totality of the evidence. This left investigators, scientists, and observers in a state of unresolved uncertainty, forced to confront a reality that seemed stranger than fiction. As the debate over the man's existence continues, the unanswered questions remain. How could one person live two separate lives, fully documented and verified, and yet be untraceable between them? And if it could happen once, could it happen again? Theories abound, but the truth remains elusive. And it is this elusiveness that makes the story of the man who lived twice one of the most chilling mysteries of our time. The legacy of two lives. The story of the man who lived twice did not end with his reappearance. In many ways, it only deepened, leaving behind questions, fears, and a lasting sense of unease for everyone involved. For his family and friends from the first life, the reappearance was a shock that never fully faded. Some tried to reconcile the man they remembered with the person living a new life, but the contradictions were impossible to ignore. The memories of shared experiences clashed with the accounts he gave in the second life. This created emotional confusion and, in some cases, profound grief, a mourning for a life that seemed both real and erased. In the second life, he integrated into a new community, building relationships and establishing routines as if his first life had never existed. Neighbors, co-workers, and family members in this second life accepted him at face value, unaware of the incredible history that preceded his arrival. He became a man leading a seemingly normal life, yet one that carried the shadow of the impossible. Authorities and investigators remained fascinated but cautious. They had verified the continuity of his existence across two lives, but no further interventions were made. The case was documented, studied, and archived, yet it remained unresolved. Many law enforcement and scientific professionals quietly admitted that they could not fully explain the phenomena. The broader implications of his story continue to resonate. It challenges the concept of identity, memory, and reality itself. If one life can seemingly end and restart elsewhere, what does that mean for the understanding of human existence? Could similar cases be hidden, unreported, or dismissed as impossible? For the public, the case became a symbol of the unexplained. Media coverage, though limited, sparked debates online, on forums, and in communities obsessed with mysteries. The man who lived twice became both a subject of fascination and a cautionary tale, a reminder that the world contains stories far stranger than fiction. Even today, researchers, psychologists, and historians reference the case. It is cited in discussions of rare psychological anomalies, unsolved mysteries, and inexplicable events in modern history. Scholars study the records and interviews, try to find patterns, explanations, or insights that might shed light on the unexplainable. And yet, for all the scrutiny and investigation, the central question remains unanswered. How could one man live two separate, fully documented lives? How could he vanish completely and then reappear, unchanged, in another place with a new identity? The legacy of the man who lived twice is not found in answers. It lies in the questions he leaves behind, in the unease that comes from knowing reality can bend in ways we cannot explain, and in the unsettling possibility that life itself may not be as singular and straightforward as we believe. In the end, his story endures, a mystery without closure, a life duplicated in ways that defy comprehension, and a reminder that the human experience may hold secrets far stranger than we are willing to admit. The unanswered mystery. The case of the man who lived twice remains one of the most perplexing and unsettling mysteries of modern times. A man vanished from one life, only to reappear years later in another, fully formed, fully documented, and yet entirely different. Despite investigations, expert analysis, and countless theories, the true explanation for his existence remains elusive. His story challenges everything we think we know about identity, memory, and the continuity of human life. It raises questions about reality itself, questions that may never be answered. Was it a rare psychological anomaly, a masterful deception, a secret experiment, or something far beyond human understanding? Family members, investigators, and researchers continue to grapple with the implications. Some see it as a cautionary tale of how fragile and mysterious identity can be. Others view it as proof that reality can bend in ways science has yet to comprehend. The man who lived twice leaves behind no resolution, only the haunting knowledge that the ordinary world may contain the extraordinary, and that some lives are far stranger than fiction. His legacy is not one of answers. It is a reminder of the unexplainable, a story that will continue to intrigue, terrify, and baffle for generations to come. And perhaps the most unsettling thought of all, somewhere in some place, the man who lived twice may still be living, unchanged and unknowable, leaving the world to question what is truly possible.